Democrats, and I'm really honored to have Misha Collins here and Christine Hallquist here. I have to read a short disclaimer before we can begin. So, because we're at University of Vermont, I have to say that the event is sponsored by the University of Vermont Democrats. The use of University of Vermont's facilities does not constitute an endorsement of a political candidate or a political organization. The University of Vermont does not, in general, endorse any candidate or any organization and donate their spaces to such. So this is the UVM Democrats event. With that, I want to thank you all for coming again. UVM Democrats is proud to have you all here at UVM. And I'm going to hand it out over to Asfar Basha, who is a member of the club, a member of the community, and definitely a voter. So here you go, Asfar.
Thank you everyone for coming out tonight and joining us on this wonderful evening. I want to, before I get started, recognize the leadership team of UVM Dems. Sam, as you just saw, Sally, our secretary, is going to be running around taking some pictures. Owen and Ari, who put together this wonderful event and got some pretty cool people to come to UVM. So if we could just give them a round of applause. So as Sam said, my name is Asfar Basha. I am a second-year student here at the University of Vermont. I am a member of the UVM College Democrats and someone who's really excited to be pushing voter registration and other ways that students can get involved on campus. If you asked me 48 hours ago what the show Supernatural was, I would not have been able to tell you. What? Collins was, I also would not have been able to. But after a brief perusing session with Google, I can unequivocally say that I am disappointed in myself for not knowing who Misha Collins is. Misha was born in Boston, raised in Massachusetts.
Yeah, Boston.
That's all.
Yeah.
Went to the University of Chicago and studied social theory. Misha stars as the angel Castiel on the show Supernatural, and has appeared on numerous other television shows throughout his career. Misha has accomplished a great deal on screen, but what I want to point out are a couple of things that he has taken the lead on off camera.
It's just a
Misha founded Random Acts, an organization that seeks to carry out substantial acts of kindness across the world. Random Acts has initiated and facilitated the start of many impactful projects that serve communities every single day. In Haiti, following the 2010 devastating earthquakes, Random Acts raised funds to help rebuild communities, homes, and families. In Nicaragua, Random Acts established the free high school in San Juan del Sur, which provides education to folks who have been left out of their education system simply because of hardship, because of distance, or because of work. Misha also founded Gishwez, the greatest international scavenger hunt the world has ever seen. Where do you come up with these names? Gishwez, a record-breaking scavenger hunt, was used to raise funds for Random Acts. Misha is the epitome of a socially responsible public figure. who has used his celebrity to make the world a better place. If there is one thing that, one sentiment that we can all take away from tonight, it's that we must all use our platforms, regardless of size, or shape, or form, because not all of us have 3 million followers on Twitter. And we need to use our platforms to generate positive change. We will fill in the cracks of our civil society that corroded. We will restructure our political culture, and ultimately we will perfect our democracy. It just takes everyone's belief in themselves to use their platform and their influence to ensure that these things happen. Our ability to inspire is not defined by the number of people we can influence, but whether we choose to influence people at all. So, if there was ever a time where every single person was needed to make this country better, to put this country back on track, it's now. So without further delay, ladies and gentlemen, Misha Collins.
Thank you. That whole thing made me very uncomfortable. By the way, you have amazing socks.
Thank you.
So I'm doing a little tour around New England right now. New England is my home turf. I spent a lot of time swimming in swimming holes in Vermont and visiting friends here in my childhood, Vermont. We go to dinner in Brattleboro all the time to get hippie food. And I love this state. And I think that we have a really amazing opportunity here. Christine is challenging Phil Scott, who is, he's a Republican, and at this moment I think that it's very important that state houses and state senates and state governors' offices all turn blue so that truly progressive agendas can be advanced. Because the thing that Phil has, and to be perfectly honest, as far as Republicans go, he's pretty good. But the thing that he has that's dangerous is a pen on his desk that he can sign vetoes. And that means that when truly progressive legislation tries to pass through the state legislature, it can be blocked by him. And that means that when Vermont tries to join together with other progressive states to build a wall of resistance against the toxic policies that are coming down from Donald Trump, there's an impediment. That's one of many, many reasons to vote for Christine in the coming election. But I also wanted to share that I think it's really a lovely and important moment. And I know that this is not something that you're talking about in your campaign, but I want to say it. I think it's really inspiring to an entire generation of young trans people to see someone in your position taking the reins of power and using their voice. Right and responsible of you not to make that a central pillar of your campaign, but I think that you should know that you are serving as an inspiration to an entire generation of people who are just starting to feel that it's okay to be themselves. So thank you for that. And I've been, in particular, stopping off. I was in Maine earlier today and in New Hampshire yesterday at college campuses. And I'm doing that because you guys are discounted in the political process. Pollsters and politicians tend to ignore you historically because young people historically tend to be losers when it comes to voting. Young people don't show up, statistically speaking. And I feel like we have this moment. It feels like there's a sea change. It feels like there's incredible momentum where young people are actually saying, wait a minute, you old people, you middle-aged people, you have fucked up our country, and we're not going to stand for this anymore. So you guys have been incredibly inspiring to me. I mean, I have been watching online and meeting in person young people who are making a tremendous impact by using their voices, by encouraging their peers and their friends and their family members to get out and vote, and by being politically informed and engaged. So you guys have a real opportunity here to change the landscape of our government by voting and by getting those that you know to vote. And critically, by actually staying informed, by reading real news from real outlets, and really understanding what's going on in the world. Because if you don't, we wind up with Donald Trump in the White House. And there are a lot of other politicians who are equally toxic, dotted across the American political landscape. So, that's all I'm going to say. Christine, would you like to talk as well?
You know, I want to reiterate what Misha said. And I say this every opportunity I get. My generation screwed this up. I still have an opportunity to fix it before I leave this planet, but we're fixing it for you. You know, I will tell you, here's the truth. Vermont and America is not easy for a young person today. And I will say that I'm so inspired by the turnout the other night, the turnout tonight, and all the work that the UVMs are doing. Because this is going to be your world. And I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I grew up in a family of 7 children in northern New York State. We didn't have a lot of money, so I paid my way through college. I have a 2-year associate's degree. I started out on the factory floor of IBM, went to digital, but I worked my way up to be successful today, and I had no college debt. And today I stand here today humbled, really humbled and honored, because Vermonters have embraced me as I've gone through this transition, and Vermonters are wonderful. But at the same time, this is a beautiful state, but at the same time, it's hard for you folks. I don't think you have the same opportunity that I did growing up. And I look at my son, who's been out of college for 15 years, and he's still paying $700 a month for college. That is not fair. And you know, when we talk about these issues, I'm going to say, you know, I'm new to politics. I got into politics because of my passion for turning things around, both at the federal level and the state level. And I'll follow up when Misha talked about Phil Scott. You know, in 2017 I was in denial because I had marched. I marched at the Women's March in 2017. I marched in the Climate March. I marched in Washington. I've marched more in the past. I never marched before this year or last year. So I've marched and marched and marched. And things hadn't changed. But in 2017 I was in denial. I was in denial because I said, this is Vermont. We live in this great little cocoon. You know, it's a great place. But in late 2017, we started to see white supremacist activity in the state. We hadn't seen that since the early 80s. And then I went to the youth march down in Montpelier, and I listened to these 4 young women, 4 17-year-old high school seniors. They called themselves Muslim Girls Making Change. They were doing slam poetry on what it's like to be Muslim in Vermont, my Vermont, where they were facing harassment every day just because of who they are. And believe me, I can relate to that. That's the day I decided to run for governor. That's the day I decided to answer a higher level calling. Because I know that I need to do everything I can. And I question my own self. Like, how did we elect Donald Trump? But I will tell you something. I have to examine my own conscience, because I fought hard to get Obama elected in 2008. I went over to New Hampshire and I canvassed, I knocked on doors, and I got an invitation to inauguration. My wife went, my son and his wife, and it was a great moment. And I said to myself, we're done, we're here, we've arrived. What a mistake that! But I'm doing my penance now. So, You know, looking at college, you know, if you look at this machine called college and this machine called the finance institutions, the cost of college has gone up 1,100% since the 1978. And at the same time, a degree has become more important than ever. And, you know, just tonight, one of the reporters said, "Oh, do I need to call you doctor? People think I have a PhD." And I don't. I have an associate's degree. But that's how people think today. They can't imagine somebody being in my position who went to a 2-year technical school. We definitely need to change that. But the cost of college has not just impacted you, it's impacted our whole society. And I look at rural Vermont and the folks struggling in rural Vermont, we're experiencing the same thing that rural America is seeing. Increasing rates of poverty, flights to the city, and an aging demographic. But we can change that. And Vermont can be a place that allows young people to succeed, and succeed in rural Vermont. And this is why we need to invest in you, our future. This is called a strategic investment. Just saying no to no new taxes, I can't wait for Saturday when I sit with Phil Scott and say, "Phil, what are you thinking?" A good person who plans for the future plans on how to get more resources. They don't just say cut costs. We figure out how to make strategic investments so we can have a better place to live. That's why today I'm announcing my blueprint for accessible college. My plan doesn't just allow students to attain a degree, but it also keeps people in state to build careers and families. You know, it's not just you leading the state. You know, I talked to an elderly couple the other day who said they're moving to Virginia because their children are working in Virginia and they want to be with their grandchildren. You know, so you know, it is about family. And I want families to stay here in Vermont. So, the plan that I'm announcing tonight, which you'll see in the press, is that it's going to make college free to children who live below the poverty line. In state college. And then the second phase, it's going to make college free to those who live twice the poverty line. College is free for 4 times the poverty line. You know, and where that line draws over time, we'll figure it out. But we're going to immediately start making sure that anybody living below the poverty line can go to college free here in Vermont. And this means UVM. This also means those career schools, the career schools like the one I went to, like Vermont Technical College and Community College of Vermont. You know, what's interesting is 75% of the parents who don't have a high school degree are living below the poverty line. So this allows their children to go to college and really break that poverty cycle. And you know, this is, when I talk about rural Vermont, this is part of my commitment to rural Vermonters. You know, I know for a fact that greater than 90% of the people get up every day and want to do a good job. That's something that's driving me in my whole life. But this systemic poverty and, of course, systemic racism, they're all tied together. You know, this is something, this is a social construct, and we're going to fix it. So I should tell you, this gets down to the basic of a civilized society. No one should be forced to live in poverty, and no one should be denied the right to go to college because of financial constraints. So, I wouldn't be standing here today in front of you if I had the same situation, 30 years ago that you're facing today. I know I wouldn't be sitting here today. So, it's my moral responsibility for you to get the same opportunity I did. Now, I will point out something else. You know, I was white, you know, so certainly back in those days, you know, and today we still have to address those racial justice issues. I always want to remind people I was white, and by the way, I was faking everybody because everybody thought I was a man. So, fake them out, didn't it? So I'm just going to end this by saying, you know, running for office is not the hardest thing I ever did. And I will never cower in front of the headwinds from Washington. And you should know that I'm going to fight hard for the Vermont I love and the Vermont that has loved me in return. Nothing is impossible when you're on the side of justice. We have time for questions. You can ask Misha, myself, ask Mark, anybody you like. Yes? Yes? How about healthcare? Thank you. Great question. So let me tell you what I tell everybody. You know, I get really confused as a candidate because I'm kind of new to this stuff. Some people like to say, are you a progressive? Are you a liberal? I don't know what I am. And I always experience that labels are used to divide and oppress people, not pull people together. Question with this statement. When it comes to Medicare for all, a living wage, and ending homelessness, those aren't political issues. That's called being a civilized society. We get to Medicare for all, and Vermont started down that path, and we got a little trouble. We're a small state, but there's a lot of states that want to do this. These solutions aren't going to come from Washington. I will build a union of states in order to get Medicare, and we will use that union of states to push back on some of these things coming out of Washington. We've got to form a tight union to push back on what's going on at the federal level, and to get us to be a civilized society. Because that civilization isn't coming out of Washington. So I will work hard to pull us together. And we together, all of us, will get us back to an aspirational country. I say aspirational because I'm going to tell you, you know, I would never call myself great, because great implies that I've reached some point and that there's no place to go. We've always been an aspirational country, and our aspirations have been for equal justice and equal opportunity for all, regardless of... And I'm going to tell you another point. I'm going to get a little wonky here, sorry. The United States spends 18 cents of every dollar on health care. European countries spend 8 and 9 cents. So, obviously, as a civilized society, or calling ourselves part of the developed world, we should be doing this. I think that's Logan in the back. Logan, you got a question? Is this going to be a loaded question? Logan works the team. Thank you, Logan.
It is a loaded question.
Okay, good.
How can people get involved?
Please, every single one of you get involved in your future. Get involved. We are going to overthrow this government.
Yes.
That's what we're about to do. So, see Logan, see anybody with a Christine for Vermont shirts, go to ChristineForVermont.com, volunteer, get every single one of your friends out to vote. Because that's what our democracy is. We have the right to overthrow our government, and it's time we do it.
If that's okay.
Yeah.
And you spoke about a coalition of states who will be resisting the new draconian cuts that have been proposed in funding for healthcare for children and families. There are hundreds of billions of dollars proposed in legislation that's moving through Congress right now in funding for medical services for children and families who need them most, who are the poorest people in this country. It's inhumane and it's completely uncivilized, and it's not what this country is about. And again, if we have the blue trifecta in state legislature, it gives us an opportunity, it gives Vermont an opportunity to fight back by creating its own bubble of legislation that protects those same families who have been subverted by our federal government. So it is a form of revolution, and it is a form of subversion to get the state government that you want to represent you properly to fight against the federal government that at the moment is not fighting for us. It's fighting for special interests, and it's fighting for big business, and it's hurting not only the country but the world and our standing in it. So, yeah. This issue because I was raised on welfare, and I wouldn't have gotten an appendectomy were it not for the fact that we had federally funded health care when I was a child, and that's being taken away from a lot of kids. Yeah.
I will also add, adding to this terrible stuff that's coming out of Washington, there's a proposed $20 billion cut in SNAP benefits. And you think about, we're going to leave people hungry? No, we can't have that. No, other questions? Yeah. Any other questions? Yes.
So, we talked a little bit about this earlier, but can you talk a little bit more about your rural economic development ideas?
Okay, the question is about rural economic development. So let me talk about my platform real quick. It centers on rural economic development. I'm also going to continue to move us towards improved health care for all, improved Medicare for all. I'm going to ensure every child receives a quality public education, and that includes not closing those rural schools. And oh, by the way, we're going to solve climate change on the way. That's what I committed my life to. When I left in March, the company, Vermont Electric Co-op, which serves about a fifth of the state, was 96% carbon free. We were offering incentives for people to move away from fossil fuel heating, cooling, and transportation. And we did that without a rate increase for 5 years. So those folks So here's rural Vermont is a microcosm of what's happening in rural America. We're seeing increasing rates of poverty, we're seeing flights to the city, we're seeing an aging demographic. We saw the exact same thing in the 30s when the cities had electricity and rural America did not. Today it's the digital divide. So we will connect every home and business in Vermont with fiber optic cable. So Vermonters can be connected to the internet at the same speed as the cities. And it doesn't go. But think about it. You can't run a business if you're not connected to the internet. It's the same thing as not having electricity. Connection is important as the internet. And rural Vermont can't get connected. We got this rotting copper infrastructure. And if you're lucky, you get connected. So obviously fiber is critical, and coupled with that, we're going to rebuild our downtowns, just like we did in St. Albans, just like we did in White River Junction. So the idea is having, I don't know about you, but I've talked to a lot of young people that would love to live in rural Vermont, would love to, do mountain climbing, skiing, tele-skiing, but biking. That's part of Vermont, but we can't get connected. So we will get connected. And by the way, that will change things for Vermont. That will change the demographics. And let me use one example, the family farm, as an example. Because Vermont, our farms are precious. But today, we're producing 30% more milk than we did in the late 60s. And people are drinking less milk. So we've got starving, dairy farms, and the dairy farms, of course, are consolidating, and we got this big behemoths out there. If you have fiber optic cable, we can create opportunities for the farmers to move into value-added crops, value-added products. We did that in Hardwick. Cooperatively owned packaging and processing facilities enables the farmer to start moving to other crops in addition to dairy that can provide them a regular revenue. So, for example, someone can start growing blueberries, and the key is packaging and processing that into blueberry jam and selling it all throughout the world using the World Wide Web. And it'll be GMO-free, organic, and Vermont branded, just like our cheese, just like our maple. Other questions? Oh, lots of questions here. Yes?
Could you speak to the opiate problem we have in the primary school?
Oh, absolutely.
And do you know about Vivitrol?
You know about what?
Vivitrol. It's a shot you can get.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, just making sure you know about it.
Yeah. So let's talk about what hasn't worked in terms of drug policy. Richard, we've spent $1 trillion on the war on drugs since Richard Nixon declared it. And we haven't changed drug use at all. But we have targeted families and targeted them by race. Failed strategy. Let me talk about a strategy that's clearly working right now, just down the road here. It's called the Howard Safe Recovery Center, or a needle. I spent the afternoon with Grace Keller. She is the most awesome person, boots on the ground, running that needle exchange. And here's, for those of you, I know I've been around Vermont for a long time, and I remember 10 years ago we had problems with needles on the street. And, Burlington struggled. They said, we're going to put this needle exchange in place. People said, oh, God, you're going to bring in these people in here. No, these people are already here. Relax. So we put this needle exchange in place. Last year, 300,000 needles exchanged. Only 81 showed up on the streets. The Howard folks picked them all up, virtually eliminating the needle problem. Now, let me tell you something even more impressive, is that clean needles will offset 6 heart valve transplants a year. A heart valve transplant is $620,000. So take 6, you math people in the room, 6 times 620,000, you get 3.72 million. Her budget's 420,000. So we can afford to add a full-time nurse there to get people help as soon as they ask for help. Today, it takes an average of at least 17 days from the time somebody who has substance use disorder to be able to get the help they need. We want to be able to get help right away. But my whole final message on this is, we leaned into our discomfort and we came up with a better answer. And I am all for moving further into harm reduction sites as well. And I'm all for we have a plan to put those in every county of the state. Because this is what, if you think about it, people are dying of cancer. When we're dying of cancer, you think about anybody I've had cancer, we spend a ton of money to fix cancer. Well, this is our cancer. These are mental health issues. These aren't criminal issues. So, yeah. Of course, you should know I have the National Vote Pro-Choice endorsement. Of course, reproductive rights are critical in pregnant family. And also part of that rural economic development, is also you know, it's a real challenge in rural Vermont for reproductive access as well. So that's something we've got to work as part of that research. Yes, way in the back.
Me?
Yep.
I really love what you're saying about, like, you know, saving the rural schools, especially because I'm from a rural school in Vermont. But where's the funding coming from this? I'm really, a lot of things, you know, need funding. We don't talk about that.
Okay, I love that question. Thank you. Funny question. Common question I get asked is, geez, we're spending way too much on education. Our property taxes are too high. What are we going to do about this? It's education, education, education. First of all, let me make a clear point here. You know, I'm going to tell you the town I live in, Morrisville. I love Morrisville. I actually live in Hyde Park, but Morrisville is where I live. That's it. Yeah. And I love Morrisville. We have 2 pubs. And in that pub, we have musical entertainment and we get good food. That's where, you know, I live in the woods, but it's nice to go into town, talk to your friends. We have a movie theater. We have a library. We have grocery stores. And we have schools. And let me tell you, if we close schools in rural communities, it's the end of the town. That's the core of the community. So, remember, I'm focusing on rural economic development. We're focused on getting more people in Vermont. This demographic can be changed. I've spent 10 years on the national level working with rural America. We've done this in other parts of the country. And so this demographic is something we can challenge and change, and we can return kids into the schools. And even if we don't do that, you turn to the teachers for the solution, and these schools we can offer wraparound services, kind of raise up in the budget, and not just look at the education budget, and start putting all your mental health services, you know, mental health services in school, pediatric care, child care. We can start optimizing these schools. And I will tell you, I'm a believer in collaborative leadership. You know, when Bill Scott barks orders from Montpelier, comes up with arbitrary numbers, and then beats up the teachers in the school board, I don't know what he's thinking. We can solve that problem. And let me also talk about how we fund schools. We need to move away from the property tax system to fund these schools. We're ending up I'm not just a talking head, you know, full of whatever politician. I might be, but I always say, look, check the resume. You can do that online. But the point is, I'm going to tell you that I was on the Hyde Park School Board when we filed suit to get Act 60 back in the late 90s. And I'm going to tell you why it was so important to me then. Because the property tax system was flawed from the day it was developed. It was developed when people came back from World War II. We started to form these suburbs. Levittown was the first one. And here's what happened. It's very important for you to remember this, because this is the basis of some of our issues in terms of racial justice. The property tax system was put into place, and there were these areas that were redlined. And those red-line areas couldn't get low-interest loans. They couldn't get down payments. But if you lived in the green areas, you got help to buy your house. And you bought the house, and then the stores came in, and then employers came in. Your equity went up in your house. You used that equity to send your kids to college. Voila! You know, we saw growth. Those red-line areas were all where people of color lived. And if you're in those red line areas, you couldn't get those low interest loans. And you couldn't grow your equity. You could barely pay your electric bill. So the foundation of the property tax system is flawed right from the beginning. And, you know, Vermont, we're pretty homogeneous, but when I looked around the state, we saw the same thing happening town by town. Other questions? Yes?
Have you looked into or thought much about the lack of pay that our first responders get, and also how expensive it is for them to not only maintain certifications, but upgrade certifications?
Well, the question was around lack of pay for first responders. Let me address the living wage issue. And this is real important for you to all know what's happened to you. This has been a 40-year, something that happened for 40 years. It started with Richard Nixon. Ronald Reagan sealed the deal. It's called the attack on the working class. If you adjusted the minimum wage for inflation since the late 60s, it would be $22 an hour. That's $44,000 a year. People had benefits in the 60s, so roll another $10,000 or $15,000 on that. The minimum wage was $50,000 to $55,000 a year. So, we've seen a systematic attack. Today, people can't afford to live. So not only should we adjust it for first responders, we should adjust it for everyone. And there was a minimum wage bill that went through this year. The legislature passed to bring it to $15 an hour. That's not a living wage, but the governor vetoed it. I would certainly immediately ask the legislature to pass that through. So that, yes, not only the responders, but everybody else should be getting. We should see that wage raised. Other questions? Yes.
So anybody who was involved in the UVM campus last year knows that we've had our own issues with racial justice and like how the administration reacted to the Black Lives Matter movements and domains for justice. And even just like last week, we reinstated the new grad. And if your plans have stated to bring a lot of people under the poverty line into colleges, there's going to be a lot more people of color coming into colleges and things like that. Do you have any plans to try and help protect these people and protect people of color and with other minority differences at a legislative level? Because a lot of people feel that at the college administration level, we're not getting that protection, and a lot of people have even expressed that they feel unsafe in their own college.
Thank you. So, you know, I got to tell you, I talk about how much I love Vermont, but there is some dirty little secrets we have hiding just below the surface. You know, we incarcerate African American males at a higher rate in terms of per capita than anywhere else in the nation. And, you know, my friend Logan, where's Logan? Logan has told me stories about, you know, he was working with job programs and bringing different people into these grocery stores, and people were tracking them around. And so there's a lot of implicit bias built into, and it's natural, part of us. But it's not right. So certainly, we had a racial justice bill that went through that, again, the governor vetoed that bill as well. But what I would do is we would start tracking how discipline is applied in schools, policing, and employment, and also how wages are applied, and track that by groups, and we would have a citizen oversight board to monitor that data and review and ensure corrective actions they're putting in place. So schools and colleges are part of that as well. We'd be required to report on those issues. Because, I'm going to just tell you, I personally, I understood, I'll just tell you my own personal experience. I understood gender hierarchy, but to experience it firsthand, when I have the unique opportunity to experience being a woman and a man. And it's interesting. The first week I transitioned, Kirsten, I think I'm embarrassing her, but my daughter's standing there. My daughter is a genius, so let's point that out. So I tell the story everywhere I go, but you're here today, so I'll embarrass you. I remember I was talking to, Kirsten asked me, we were going out to dinner a lot, she was helping me out. And I said, Kirsten, she said, how's your transition going? I said, Kirsten, I think I'm experiencing transphobia. She says, tell me more. Well, I was at this meeting with all these men this morning, and I said something, they didn't hear me. And then I said something later on, they didn't hear me. That never happened before. And then in the afternoon, I said something, someone said something, oh yeah, Christine said that this morning. Kirsten said, what'd you say, Kirsten? Well, what?
That's not transphobia. That's welcome to me.
I'm
just wondering, what's your opinion on the Sept policy for sexual misconduct on college campuses? I know there's a draft coming back that is literally famous for the race survey, so if you can kind of help it right now.
What's my opinion of anything coming out of Washington? Oh my God!
Anything you have to say on the matter? I
just have to say, this is 2020, you better overthrow that government, because that's terrible what's happening. And Betsy DeVos, How did she become our head? Yeah. You just said Betsy DeVos. That's all you need to say. Yes.
Oh, so I know that since you're running for Vermont, you're like Vermont. Is there anything even like as a potential thought in terms of like, I'm also from New York, Westchester, in terms of having out-of-state students end up staying after they graduate?
The question being out-of-state students staying after they graduate. Well, I hope that by doing this rural development and growing jobs, there will be jobs for you here. As far as creating necessarily incentives, I haven't necessarily thought about it, but certainly when we talk about the college, the free college, we're going to require people to stay in state as long as they, for the number of years they've had college education. But I got to believe that there's a lot of young people like yourself that would love to live in Vermont if they could find jobs. So I think that's when I talk about rural development. That's what I'm talking about. Yes. Yes.
I have a question for Misha. Can you go into a little more detail about why you should support Christine?
Well, I think I've articulated those reasons so far. And what I've heard here today has made me really happy to be here. It's really lovely hearing you answer questions in person and get into some of the particular policy issues that you have obviously delved into. I think it's a really important moment to be supporting progressive candidates, and Christine is not only a solid, passionate, progressive candidate, but also someone who represents a movement in our country that is incredibly inspiring, and I think it would be a great badge of honor for the state of Vermont to have Christine serving as its governor.
My question is for will you help with the bathroom policies? Because my school isn't treated
We're here to support you. So are you in high school?
in my school, there's only two which if you have the English hallway downstairs on the left, the science hallway is upstairs on the right. That's where the non-binary, like the individual bathroom. And you get like in trouble if you're out longer than like 5 minutes without pass. Will you?
We will definitely address that. In fact, is Brenda Churchill in here? Okay, Brenda, we have a person on the team who's the LGBTQIA lobbyist in Montpelier, and we are lobbying hard. Brenda was responsible for the gender-neutral bathroom bill, and we will continue to work that issue. Yes, I absolutely agree. We should be free to pee where we need to pee. Other questions? Yes.
In a nation that's very divided at this time, if you're elected, do you have any plans to reach across the aisle to try to bridge that gap a little more?
Okay, thank you for that question. The question about reaching across the aisle. Let me tell you a great story. It kind of moved my heart. A couple of weeks ago, I'll just point out, I don't spend all my time in the parks, but this is I was in my local pub, and this kid pulls up next to me. He was in his 20s. He says, "You liberal Democrats, you're the reason we have all these problems in this country." What? And I turned to him and tell me more. And he said, and these are dog whistle terms I'm going to go. He said, "These welfare queens, you let these welfare queens do, Hang on a second. Let's talk about the $30 million CEO who doesn't pay taxes. He said, how many welfare kings is that? He stopped dead in his tracks. Then he said, I work at the local hardware. He says, these wealthy people come in with tax exempt forms. I said, you're getting it. And then I changed the subject. I said, what's important to you? He says, well, I love Morrisville. He says, I want to have a family here. I want to have a secure job. I want a future. So that's what's important to me. I said, we are no different. Somehow our politics have divided us. I speak to 90% of Vermonters. I don't care what political stripe they are. They have the same goals. I believe we're a victim. We've allowed ourselves to be victims and fight against each other while we've been getting ripped off the past 30 years. Yes, I'll be reaching across the aisle because just because you're a Republican doesn't mean you think much different than I do. I truly believe that.
Before Christine takes one more, I just want to say we are running out of time. So let's take 3 more questions, and then we'll call it a night.
Okay, way in back there in the closet there. You come out of the closet now.
What is your plan for improving school safety when kids are afraid to go to school and parents are afraid to send their kids to school?
The question on school safety is, and this is again where the racial justice bills come into place. We've got to start by teaching the values and teaching people why bullying is not right. We've got to stop bullying for starters. And of course, bullying doesn't stop at kids, right? It goes right up to the president. But it started somewhere. And I would say that the current governor has carried out a plan to create physical safety. What I want to do is create a plan to create emotional safety. Baseball cap.
Hi, I'm with the Vermont Cynic, the UVM student newspaper, and I have a question to ask actually both of you. Why UVM in particular, and why now? Why did you what would you like to say to UVM students right now?
You want to take that one first?
Well, I'm particularly interested in talking to young people about being civically engaged at this moment because I think that students on college campuses could turn the political tide in this country. I'm in Vermont because I'm from New England and I could drive here. That's a factor. I'm also here because I love Christine's story and I love her policies and this young woman was crying a moment ago because she doesn't feel taken care of in the school system because of her gender identity. And that breaks my heart. I tear up when I think that people who are different feel persecuted anywhere in this country, and especially in public schools or by policies perpetrated by the government. And so when I see an opportunity to make even a small difference on that issue, I want to add my voice to the chorus.
And I'm just going to say that, again, I'll just repeat what I said in the beginning. It's my generation that really screwed this up. And I still have time to fix it before I leave this planet. I'm going to fight to my death, whenever that will be. But I'm fighting for you. And it's about you're inheriting this. And I want you to inherit something you can be proud of. And let's all work together to do that. You have a printer.
What plans do you have to
Strengthening gun restrictions in Vermont.
To do, I'm sorry, what's the question?
Strengthening gun restrictions in Vermont.
Oh, gun restrictions. Oh, this is an easy one for me, because I've been consistent from day one on this. I support common sense gun laws. I'm proud of what the legislature did, and I compliment the governor for signing those bills. We've got about 2 years of work to get all the protocols in place to make it effective. You know, when I talk to police officers, they say, you got to tell me what the parameters are when I remove weapons from people who are in danger to themselves or others. So we got to get the procedure in place. We got to get the databases in place for background checks and sharing that information. I would also support an additional assault weapons ban.
I want to say thank you to Christine, thank you to Misha for coming out and talking to us this evening. And before we conclude, I just want to mention one of my favorite sayings of Christine, which is that the state of Vermont has given her so much. The state of Vermont has given her a community, family, and has taken her in. So the least she can do is give up her retirement for us, right? But she's not going to do it alone. She's not going to do it alone. So it's going to take every single person in this room to sign up back there, to make phone calls for her, to knock on doors for her. You see Aaron back there? You see how excited he is? We are all that excited to get to one election in November. We will win this November. I guarantee you that. Misha, I want to say thank you for coming out, because this is one of those unique times where every single person's platform is so important for us to get there. And I just want to say, one of my political science professors, I remember last semester, said that our generation is the most pathetic when it comes to voter turnout. So I really want to stick it to her. So if every single person